to go to Dr. Beatty. He retired. Then I went to Dr. Locklear, and he moved from South Point to whatever it's called in Gastonia. Now he's left that, so he's kind of in
Ready or not, I don't care.
neutral. Dr. Locklear, David Locklear.
Oh, well, I heard some stuff. Yeah,
I just know he's not practicing right now.
Just sit down. That's why we have it set up for you to have microphones. We're going to do public comment from the podium.
They got time.
You can do either one you want. Well, that's fine. He's going to get up and talk. If you want to get up and talk over there, they're loaded. Yeah, the mic's on over there. So whatever makes you comfortable.
they said, oh, that is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no problem.
He's kind of been off ever since his son.
Jimmy's gotten pretty good. Owen, I got his lyrics.
Has been off.
Right.
Jason,
Well, he's been-
unfortunately, I was like, I'm driving on the way home, and Jason.
He's been a physician for 40-something years, hasn't he?
Well, I started going to Dr. Beatty, and then when Dr. Beatty left, I started going to Dr.
Well,
Locklear.
that's what I did. Because they started South Point Family Practice.
I went.
They were born on the exact same day, the exact same year.
I went when they were in the mobile home behind the post office. That's when
That's
I
where they
started going
started.
to him.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was probably one of his in the first 100.
Sure.
Oh my, I guess my phone's off. I hate to start doing Daryl Hall and John Oates in the middle of you get a concert.
Let's bring this meeting to order. Tonight our invocation will be provided by Councilman David Moore.
Let us pray. Our dear Heavenly Father, we do thank you for this day, Lord, and for the opportunity to be here together, Lord, with our great citizens, Lord, and the council and staff, Lord. Be with us tonight. Guide us, direct us, Lord. Give us patience, Lord. Let us look for the happy medium that we need. Continue to guide us through this meeting. We ask all these things in your precious and heavenly name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Next is set the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Motion by Ms. Paula, second by Ms. Shoemaker. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. First item is the consent agenda. We have 5 items. Are there any questions? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Motion by Ms. Harris, second by Ms. Shoemaker. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. Tonight we have a joint meeting between the City Council, the Mount Holly Historical Society, and the Save the Museum group. So I want to thank everybody for being here. I think for the most part, 99% of us know each other. We've known each other for probably, we don't want to tell everybody's age, but
You can.
you've known me for at least 50 years. I can say that. So we all know and respect one another, and I think it's great. I don't know any other town that would do this, to be honest. I mean, you know, we felt like that it was important that all of us sit down and talk, and I think it's great that we do it in this forum. I think communication is a key factor in all of this, and I think that the more that we can have open communication about it, the better. So I'm glad we're all here. I do feel uncomfortable with my back to everybody, but Chris is going to tackle anybody that comes up. But we appreciate it. Thank you for being here. I do have some introductory remarks, and then we'll get started. So I want to begin tonight's meeting by thanking everyone for attending. I know this has been an emotional topic for many of us here tonight, and countless hours have been dedicated to creating the presentations that we will hear. It's important to start off by saying how much the city appreciates the hard work done by the Historical Society. As the official keepers of the city archives, your volunteers have worked diligently to develop this vital asset to our community. You have maintained the city's archives and created exhibits that showcase Mount Holly's rich history. We want you to know that the support of the Historical Society is not just words alone. Since its inception over a decade ago, the city has provided more than $300,000 in funding toward maintenance, operations, renovations, and utility payments while providing a rent-free location. We recognize the important work conducted by the dozens of volunteers who have worked tirelessly throughout the years. To be very transparent, the city hasn't maintained all aspects of the current building of the museum very well. Although the middle floor that is home to the museum exhibits and the office are in decent condition, the upper floor and basement are in need of desperate repairs and improvements. The city wants to further the mission of the Historical Society and will support its efforts by providing a new location, which is cost-free, as well as annual funding for operations, programming, and a state-of-the-art museum. In no way does the city want the Historical Society to disappear or dissolve. In reality, we're dedicated to cultivating our partnership and our continued collaboration. So having said that, I'm sure that, we'll have input from both sides. This is not for show. This is not just to sit down and say we're going to check something off and we're done what we said we would do and go on. If that was it, why do this? I'm not wasting everybody's time, neither is the council. We're here to listen. We're here to have constructive dialogue and, see if we can come to the best decision for everyone. And I think that's all of our goals, all right? So first tonight is going to be a presentation by City Manager Miles Braswell.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Thank you, Ms. Thompson, very good and proud for being here. Look forward to this discussion. Hopefully we'll have a productive discussion. And from the staff's perspective, this presentation is really factual. And so we want to get some things out on the table and making sure that everybody in the audience understood how we came about, how council and mayor came about the decision to relocate the Historical Society Museum to the Munition Complex. So in this presentation,
No, you're fine.
Can you hear me now? Now?
Yes, it started coming through. I think you got to talk into it.
This one going?
Yeah.
Okay. So the topics that we'll go through today on this presentation is to point out the relationship between the Mount Holly Historical Society and the city. We're going to talk about the timeline of the relocation discussion. We're going to talk about the old city hall, that building, and the preservation that's needed there. There needs to be some renovation, of course, and how city can repay for that. There's also some space comparisons between the old city hall and the municipal complex. I'm going to state where we are currently, our current activities, and then I'll summarize everything with some charts. So the first thing you heard the mayor talk about is that there's been a long-standing relationship between society and the city. And just so that everybody knows, of course the Historic Society knows, the city knows, but I want to put some things out there that people may not know is that the archives at the Historic Society are city-owned, archives. The Historic Society themselves, they have an MOU, memorandum of understanding, where they have the right to take care of these archives. They undertake past and extensive cataloging, preserving, displaying the archives, and the Historic Society also within this MOU needs to maintain the interior of rooms. They've done a great job on the center floor to maintain where they are currently in the museum. And of course, the city shall maintain the exterior, HVAC, electrical, plumbing, all things that go along with the building and basic utilities. And in turn, the city allows use of the space. And the Historical Society was originally in the old city hall, and then through an amended MOU, they moved into the annex space. And then earlier this year, of course, you know that the annex was sold for $200,000 through the public upset bid process. And through that upset bid process and upset of the building, the new property owner granted the city public easement to use the parking lot, also agreed to certain parking lot improvements, and will build a dumpster closure, which is constructed this time at the old city hall. The mayor, you heard the mayor say that the city has expended over $300,000 since 2008 to present, we get back in our financial system, and see the numbers here. For maintenance, we spent $11,219. In operations, $49,837. In utilities, $129,442. And in renovations, $117,389. Some of the things that this does not show is that city staff maintains the building, so we can't capture all the maintenance workers' time to go over there and prepare a toilet or pull conduit for a new light socket. So we don't really capture all that data. And another thing is that you can see that the maintenance cost over the past, 20 years is that it's $11,219. And that is not a lot of money spent in maintenance. But when you point out that you're right, we haven't really done a good job to maintain our asset over there. So moving on to the timeline of relocation discussions. This is what took place. Of course, you know, there's been.
I'm sorry, you really do need to put that microphone to your
I
mouth.
don't know, is it on?
Yes, sir, you have to.
I don't think it's working.
Try another one. Can you test that?
That one's on. You have to talk into the front of it. You can't
Hello?
talk over the top of it. Well, it did work a second ago.
Is this wired to where it is?
I was gonna say, yeah, just grab one of those.
That one does work.
Hey, can you hear me now? That's
Yes.
better. All right, great. I'm gonna start from scratch and go back to the very beginning. No, I don't think so. So let me get this organized here. So the timeline of relocation discussions is that there has been a close relationship between past board members, past city council members, existing city council members, existing managers, past managers. So along the way, since 2008, it's not like there's not been a lot of discussions on the Historical Society. There's also been a lot of general conversations, property tours, et cetera. And another thing that shows like how close the society and council is that during the process of us selling the annex, council allowed Mr. Brinkley to come into one of our closed sessions and give a presentation on behalf of the Historical Society. So that's kind of out of the ordinary. I wanted to point that out, that there is close discussions between the two groups. And in February 25th, 2022 was our city council retreat. And you can see that there was an item on the agenda, Historical Society discussion of municipal complex vacant space. And these meetings are advertised publicly, just like a city council meeting. However, you know that there's a meeting in this space. There's also the same information goes out to the public for the retreat. After the decision at the retreat, council liaison, Mr. Craig, and myself went and met with Richard Brown and Gary Brinkley and discussed the outcome of the retreat and that decision that was made. And also, there's a few dates here that capture the retreat meeting minutes and what took place, and then of course you all know that council goes through that process with our city clerk to make sure that it's documented properly. And then on April 8th, city staff met with Richard Brown and Gary Brinkley and brought them over to the municipal complex space and did a tour of that space. So at Old City Hall, of course, we need to preserve our building. You can see that City Hall replacement value on our books is $2.2 million. And I say that we need to replace it, to maintain it, because we don't want it falling apart. If it falls apart, then we can't use that as collateral when we go out for a loan or a bond to do other infrastructure projects. We put our buildings up for collateral. So if the building went into disrepair, then the value of that goes down. We don't want that to occur. And we've recently increased our bond rating just because the city's finances are so well, and that we don't want those bond ratings to go down. The bond rating gives you the ability to borrow funds at a lower rate, and so we don't need the bond rating to go down at all. And also, the strategic vision plan It encourages overall downtown designs, and you can see some of the things that I've highlighted. I'm not going to read it. The things that I've highlighted is the first visual impression visitors get are buildings downtown. The commercial district design affects buying decisions of folks, and architectural assets are the primary characteristics that distinguishes our community from somebody else's. So when you drive through downtown and look around, you see the buildings, and that's downtown. Everybody knows that's our downtown. And so we don't want that building to fall apart and have to tear down, and there's a new building built, and then it's not the historic downtown that we know. We do look at if we have to renovate one of our buildings, how can we do that financially? Of course, we're accountable to tax-paying citizens. If we're going to preserve our building, then we have to do some renovation and maintenance to it. If there are end users, there's probably a revenue that's expected to come in the spaces that are in Old City Hall. And these revenues from potential end users, they could pay for it. But you can see that there's no end user in mind at this time. We want to put that out there. That was one of the things that council talked about in the retreat, that nobody has come to us. We hadn't reached out to anyone about what could be in there at that time during the retreat. And potentially, potentially 4 spaces with 3 revenue generators. The 4 spaces that's listed here, if you consider Old City Hall has 3 stories, you got an upper floor, the middle floor where the Historic Society is located, the bottom floor, and then we have 1 space in the municipal complex is vacant. 4 spaces currently, we could have 3 revenue generators at some point in time. Just putting that out there. So the municipal complex, we're calling this area around here a campus at this time. And in 2008 and the 2019 strategic vision plan, both of them are listed to expand our downtown core from downtown to grow our downtown towards the Catawba River. And we just so happen to be located in the middle of downtown and the Catawba River. This mill that we're currently in, we renovated it. And so here are some of the statistics that we're looking at. So we have 2 spaces downstairs that are currently leased. We have Kinetics Physiotherapy, and they have 70 to 100 patient visits per day currently.
Per week.
I'm sorry, per week. Thank you for the clarification. Also, there's Dr. Peterson's dental office that's being constructed currently. We talked to Dr. Peterson, and she is anticipating 125 patient visits per week. We've also constructed the MHPD Memorial Plaza. A lot of foot traffic goes through there. We have our Arts on Greenway building just across the street here. Our Riverhawk Greenway, this new number here we just got last week was 54,590 people are trail users annually. That's a lot of foot traffic on the Riverhawk Greenway. Also, Highway 27 has 19,500 vehicles per day that travels by the municipal complex. As a comparator, on Main Street, there's 4,400 vehicles per day. We also looked at our rentals since 2019 for the Grand Hall and our training room. For the Grand Hall, there's 92 Grand Hall rentals since 2019. And on the training room just next door over here, we've had 12 events outside of city staff meeting in there. We've had 12 other groups that came in and met in the training room. And so I know there's discussions for potential field trips to Historic Society. In the past, schools have come here as a civic field trip, and we can see that could grow here as well, given that we have now the Arts on the Greenway, we have the Memorial Plaza, potentially the Historic Society located here, that it could be a campus field trip at some point in time. So at this point, we're going to get into some of the details. We've got several pictures that we've taken, so you can see the condition of Old City Hall. And so the first few pictures here of the building envelope, you can see that this is downstairs, right inside the doorway. It's just crumbling. This is an exposed wooden frame that needs some repair outside of the old City Hall. You can also see above the window some of the lintel. There's several cracks that it's kind of hard to see from this picture, but they kind of run up the building. There's also a vertical crack between these two. Looks like this was probably an addition at some point. Just the brick's a different color. We need to grind that out, seal it so we don't have any more water penetration. You can also see this is inside the basement of Old City Hall, where there's some water leaching through the exterior wall. This is a sidewalk that looks at the lintel here that you can see needs some attention and maintenance. So for the basement, there's some issues taking place in the basement, the ground floor. There's some water penetration. We have some moisture issues down there. It's a big space. We have existing offices, and then there's some areas downstairs where it goes into like a basement area. There's no real separation for any kind of HVAC to divide those areas for conditioning, so that would have to occur to condition downstairs. We need to update our MEP, mechanical, electrical, plumbing. There's, of course, cosmetic repairs that are needed, paint, flooring, ceiling repairs, and then some ADA accessibility issues for ingress and egress through some doorways, and then for the restrooms down there. These are pictures of the basement area at Old City Hall. You can just see some support columns that are corroded, rusted. It's broken joist, and then at some point in the past, there's been some drill through some joists that go through there. So we've talked to our build maintenance folks where we need to do some repairs in this general area. You can also see that there's dated old boiler pipes. Some of the elbows on the insulation we believe is asbestos. These floor tiles are in poor condition. We believe those floor tiles are asbestos, along with these pipes in this location, similar to the boiler pipes. The restroom is not ADA compatible, and then for a lot of the moisture generation and penetration in the basement, we've placed a sump pump, and you can see that some of the mechanical units, their overflow lines spill out into the sump area, but you can also see like where some future water marks have been. So when this area fills up with water, the sump pump kicks on, pumps the water out. The upper floor, there's no MEP. There's code compliant issues for the stairwell. We believe there's some asbestos lead-based paint, probably just the age and condition of the area upstairs. And of course, there's ADA accessibility issues with the stairwell and the restrooms upstairs. Here are some pictures of the upstairs area. The first picture is showing the stairwell. It's very narrow and steep, so to access that area, more than likely it'll be a new set of stairs to come in. Floor tile, you can see that there's a lot of materials falling from the ceiling at this point. It's hard to see in this picture, but there's a raised area on the floor. We need to do some leveling. Asbestos floor tile. Then the mechanical units, the electrical panel here. Of course, there's no electrical up there, but you can see how dated that is. Upstairs, we have some walls that are crumbling here, some ceilings that are falling. I believe at some point in the past, there's probably a divider wall from this picture. There's a beam, but you can see the HVAC electrical kind of wraps around that. So it's a good picture showing what it looks like upstairs. Along the window, you can see there's water penetration. It's kind of running down the wall there. And of course, the bathrooms are in desperate need of repair. And then the middle floor of the Historic Society, there's some plumbing that needs to take place. If we're going to repair the upstairs and the downstairs, we're definitely going to make an impact to the existing society space. just because there's some extensive renovations needed to the building. And then I just took some general pictures. The carpet is in good condition. This shows the old meeting council chambers there. Where's the conference room now? And I believe there's some exhibits currently that's taking place inside that room. The hallway, just so everybody has an idea that there's the hallway. We have some chairs that are in that space at this time. The kitchen area, it used to be an old, probably electrical closet, so probably not the best use of space for a kitchen and electrical area or electrical panel there. That's all I needed to show. But the carpet walls, ceiling, this area is in good condition. There's some mechanical units to the back that are getting some age. Probably eventually we'll have to replace those before too long. And then these two restrooms, the male and female restroom, they need some updates to be compliant for ADA accessibility. So we're moving from the old city hall to the municipal complex. This is the vacant shell space that is in between Kinetics and the dental office downstairs. So of course you all know that this is a historic building itself. It's built in 1882. Inside the space, high ceilings, they're open ceilings. You can see the floor from upstairs offices. There's a concrete floor currently in place. Outside of the space that we're talking about, there's a vestibule that enters into Kinetics to the left, and then for this vacant space to the right. Also in this area, there's the restroom facility is located outside of the vacant space. The floor square footage downstairs is 2,188 square feet. The ceiling height is 13 feet, 10 inches. But given that it's like such an open floor plan, there's really nothing in there at this time that you can just use your imagination on what it could look like. We can move some stationary walls. We could put movable walls inside of there. We could make lighting appropriate for displays. We can make an office, a meeting space. I know that was a concern that there's no office and meeting space in that current area. We're in the municipal complex. There's a training room next door that the Historic Society would be allowed to use. And also we could update technology for an enhanced experience. You know, you're working through an architect, they can think outside the box to make sure that the museum is created like the society would like. Some pictures of downstairs in the vacant space. This picture's looking back towards the vestibule. So those glass doors like enter into the area that comes off. There's also a couple doors that enter off of Central Avenue. The center picture is looking back towards Dr. Peterson's office. This is a newly constructed wall that separates the two spaces. You can see the floor in this area is concrete. This is a back storage room that looks into a kitchen area. If you recall, when Discover U was downstairs, they had an educational kitchen. This is the kitchen area. This is the actual pictures of the kitchen that's in place now. We're not saying that the kitchen has to stay. It's up to the society whether they'd like to have a kitchen or whether we can move a kitchen somewhere else or demo it all together. This shows the actual floor plan of that space, 2,188 square feet. It's in the red. Dr. Peterson has 2,804 square feet. The vestibule is 700 square feet where you can enter Kinetics or this vacant space. And then there's restrooms in this area that is a common restroom. This picture, I took a few pictures of, I believe these are the Mint Museum in downtown Charlotte, about just kind of showing what the spaces could be. This has a good display of like uniforms or dresses that, you know, could be assembled, that could tell the story of what you're displaying in that area. Thought it was kind of neat that they have a wall and a raised floor in that area. You maybe could wheel it around wherever you needed it. This space down here on the bottom shows the open floor plan where you have a wall that could be constructed in any place you would like. Maybe you could wheel it around if you'd like to do that. And what I thought about this was that it shows a building almost that was constructed inside of a space where I could imagine that maybe you could have a display of a barbershop there, or the church display or something like that, where you could create almost the building inside the building, and maybe make a display inside of that. That's me trying to be an architect. So as you compare the two spaces here, I wanted to show that we've heard that one space is larger than the other space, and so we kind of broke those areas down to try to tell that if you look at it, the way there's display areas, there's hallways, there's restrooms, that this space at the new museum that could be at the municipal complex could be just as compatible as the existing Old City Hall. For the existing museum at Old City Hall, there's almost 2,000 square feet of display space. Down here, it's 2,188. At the Old City Hall, 865 square feet of conference room, and that's the old council chambers. Here, we said, well, you could construct something there, but you're also allowed to use the training room here if you like. So there's 1,453 square feet in this area. Hallways at the Old City Hall was 979 square feet. So I compared that to the vestibule here at the municipal complex. Restrooms at the Old City Hall is 247 square feet. Here there's 365 square feet of a common area restroom. And then there's some miscellaneous items over at Old City Hall that shows that there is, in the front, of course, there's a store, you have an office, you have a kitchen, you have a closet, and those areas equaled 456 square feet. Here there's nothing because it's factored into the 2,188. Adding these numbers together, the existing museum is 4,573, and with a new museum space, we could see it could be close to 4,706 square feet. So where are we currently? Richard Brown and Gary Brinkley have toured the vacant space. The floor plan has been shared with them. And this fiscal year 22-23, we budgeted $85,000 for an architect, and we've gone through the process of advertising the RFQ, which is the request for qualifications, so we can select the architect. And we've got qualification packages from our architects currently. Mr. Brown reviewed the RFQ with us. He also toured the facility with staff and the potential architect. The architect selection can be presented to council very soon. Like I said, we have the qualification package here. The contract and design, we were thinking that we would have the contract and design complete April of 2023 with a construction estimate prepared with this architect in time for next year's fiscal year budget. And so usually we move into the budget process. We were thinking probably April we'd have a good idea. We have the design laid out. We'd know how much it would cost us to construct a museum. And then staff, of course, would ask council to approve that through the budget process. And then we would anticipate construction if council so choose to approve that in the budget. We would anticipate the construction of a new museum between July 1st, 2023 and June 30th, 2024, which is next fiscal year. So that was a lot to cover, and so I wanted to summarize the things that I just covered with you is that, and we kind of did like the red light, green light, up and down arrows just to kind of make it easier. With the archive preservation, if we stayed at Old City Hall, or if we moved you to the new municipal complex with a new museum, could we preserve our archives? Of course we could. So we've got two green arrows pointing towards the sky. We have foot traffic at both places. Yes, we have foot traffic here. We've showed you that there's the Riverhawk Greenway. We have spaces down here. It's really used a lot, so we were saying, yes, there's foot traffic. We've got both of those going towards the sky with green arrows. Would we disrupt operations during a building renovation project at Old City Hall? Absolutely. The center floor is the society and the space. Downstairs needs a lot of repairs. Upstairs needs a lot of repairs. So you can just imagine what would take place if we're tearing out stairs so we can access up to the upper floor, or if we're grinding joints or running conduit between floors. It'd be a major impact to operations. If we moved the museum to this space, would we impact operations? Yes, we'd also impact operations, but I think that we'd impact operations one time because we could construct the area here and then impact the museum by having the city and their contractors pack the area up and then bring it over here. So at some point there would be a closure of the museum just so the new space could be occupied. So that's a negative as well for moving us over here with a yellow arrow facing down. Could we activate spaces downtown and in the municipal complex? We could. We want to activate towards the river. We'd like to have a catalyst project, just like when downtown was renovated many years ago and the streetscape project occurred. We had a museum for a catalyst project down there. I could see the same thing happen if the museum was located here as well. And the ability for the city to recoup and rehab for the rehab funds, we would have a less of an impact if we stayed at the old city hall. So we're pointing the arrow down, and that we could pay for a renovation project if we have 3 active spaces with the Historic Society located at the municipal complex. And that concludes my presentation, so I'll turn it back over to the mayor.
I need my microphone back.
So we have the Save the Museum and the Mount Holly Historical Society. Did y'all have any questions for Miles from his presentation? That's what the slide says. So, or would you rather go ahead and go through your comments?
I think we probably hit some of the points and stop along the way and.
Okay. He's going to go ahead with his presentation and then stop along the way and ask questions. They couldn't hear you, Gary. So next is a presentation from the Mount Holly Historical Society. And if y'all want to use this, it's perfectly fine.
Can we check this one? Check, check. Is that working?
It's much easier if y'all
Okay.
use that.
Is this working? Okay, I think I'm first. I'm Gary Brinkley. I'm a former president of the Historical Society. I've been on the board, I think, 7 years of the past, of the 12, almost 13 we've been in existence, and I've been involved a lot. Those of you that know me know I've been there a lot, and a lot more than a lot of people. I'm not bragging, I'm just saying that's what it is. They picked me to talk a little bit about the history because of what I just said, and nobody else wanted to go first. So here I am. One little minor point. We've been talking about Save the Museum. We thought a better name is really Don't Move the Museum for the efforts, and so we're not trying to save it because either solution is going to be a museum at the end, but our position really is we think it's better suited where it is. Okay, here's some background. In August 2010, a group of citizens began meeting to discuss the formation of the Mount Holly Historical Society. I mean, I've heard a lot of different versions about who gets credit for this, and there are a lot of people that waved their hands and said, we did it, we did it, we did it, we did it. I don't really know, I wasn't around. But I did go back to the 501c3 application that was submitted back in August of I think, 2010. And the 501c3 is what all nonprofits have to submit to the government to get permission to operate as a nonprofit. And what they said then was, the Historical Society is a volunteer group that came together out of concern for the archive materials. I'm reading their version because it's a lot better than what I would write. Out of concern for the archive materials that have been turned into the city of Mount Holly over the years and stored here and there at City Hall, but had not been cared for in such a way to preserve them and display them. The city of Mount Holly has had an archives committee at various times appointed by the city council or the mayor, but none of the committees were very successful over the long haul. I don't think there's any disagreement about that. Back in the 70s, and there are a number of people here that were in the junior women's club back then, and they were involved in the 70s in organizing the archives. And then a lot of those folks aged out, and it kind of crumbled. We aren't really sure what happened after that. But we do know in the early 90s, Bobby and Melanie Black were recruited by Mayor Black to become the city archivist, and they were involved for a number of years. But nothing stuck, and nothing really happened. And I think everybody would admit we still had a lot of archives. They weren't displayed, and that carried over into the early 2000s. And then a little brief, another segment from the from the 501c3. Some of this is maybe a little repetitive. We didn't know what they were going to say. They didn't know what we were going to say. So there's some degree of overlap. But I've already written it down, so I'm going to say it. This is about the MOU with the city of. The MOU stands for Memorandum of Understanding, and it's a formal document that is used between the city and various entities around town that sort of lays out the guidelines and principles under which we operate. And the 501c3 said the Historical Society is affiliated with the city of Mount Holly in that we have a memorandum of understanding with them to care for, preserve, and display the city's archival materials. And they're letting us use one of the buildings the city owns. I mean, that's different words, but that's what Miles said. As you might imagine, cataloging, preserving, and displaying the archives was not an easy feat. And I'd say, although it finally looked like we had a solution that was going to work when the Historical Society came along, and the museum is the proof of the pudding, it did work. If you don't listen to anything else I said, listen to this next little piece, because this came from Ralph Waldo Emerson, who was a lot smarter than me, so I wrote down what he said because it applies here. He said, enthusiasm is one of the most powerful engines of success. When you do a thing, do it with all your might. Put your whole soul into it. Stamp it with your own personality. Be active, be energetic, be enthusiastic and faithful, and you will accomplish your object. Nothing great was ever achieved without enthusiasm. And so to me, that enthusiasm is what made the museum what it is today. The early board members and early boards, they made a difference, and they were enthusiastic. They were going to make this work, and they got in there and they dug through those dirty, dusty boxes. My 85-year-old mother got down there and went through boxes, and I came across her little handwriting years later where she'd written names on the backs of pictures of people that she knew. And we would meet on Saturdays and work hours going through the boxes. These boxes have been sitting in corners and cabinets and who knows where. Some things had been deteriorated. We ended up having to throw away things. Anybody in here that it was painful to take something that you knew somebody had saved, but it just wasn't going to make it. It was crumbling, and we'd have to throw it away. I wanted to give public acknowledgement to Roy and Christine Vogel, who live up in Stonewater. They moved here from New Jersey, and they became avid and serious board members in the early days. They encouraged everyone to aim high. And I seriously doubt that any of those that were involved in the early years would have anticipated such a fine museum as we now have. The mayor and David Moore were part of the 2010-2011 councils that approved this. I really doubt when y'all approved this that you had a vision it was going to be where we are today. Nobody did. We didn't know ourselves. We aimed high. And each exhibit we did, when we planned the next one, everybody said, we've got to do at least as good as that one, but we want to do better. Okay, let me think, get my glasses back on. I put this, the little scales up there because I wanted to emphasize, I think this was a fair deal. In the beginning, the city said, we'll give you the building, we'll pay for all the things that Miles described, and, you know, the volunteers contributed a lot of time. And I went on an effort because a lot of people asked me, how much has this taken? So I made an effort to contact as many of the 50 board members that have been on the board since 2010. And I asked them, how many hours did you put in? And, you know, we'd have to discuss it. Anyway, I came up with a number, 55,000 hours. That's a lot of hours, people. And, you know, this was not easy hours. They were hard hours, blood, sweat, and tear hours. Some of them painting. Richard and I painted rooms. You know, we've cleaned baseboards. We've done everything you can think of to make the museum as good as we could make it. Now, these 50 board members, they aren't not slouch people. You know, there's a principal. There's several teachers. Let me find my list here. There are IT folks and graphic designers, attorneys, a doctor and nurses, small business owners, those that worked for large corporations, and some worked at nonprofits. And if you take those 55,000 and you say, it's worth $10 an hour, that's over $500,000 of labor invested by the volunteer community. $10 probably doesn't really cut it. If you go to 30, I don't know what's reasonable. 30 is over $1 million, you know, $1.6 million. So the volunteers, I think, to my scales, lived up to their part of the bargain. You know, you wanted a museum, you wanted stuff displayed, organized, catalog. We did it. We've got it. We have it. It exists right up there. You know, it's there today. Now, we did use the services of a museum designer that we hired from. We were lucky to find him. He was over in McAdenville. He wanted to be. His wife was working. He wanted to be at home, and ours was perfect. He came over and worked 2 or 3 hours a week and gave us advice, and we'd talk about what's the best way to accomplish this, accomplish that. Now, we had to pay for him ourselves. In the Jerry Bishop days, Jerry said we could not charge consultants, that the city couldn't help us with consultants, and so we had to pay for the museum designer ourselves, and we did that. Now, he gave us a lot of training and a lot of good advice, and you know, his name's Kevin Lamp. He did a great job, and I think advising us in how to build the museum. And one of his things was every room should tell a story, you know, without somebody having to be there and to instruct you what you're looking at. So we tried to do that. It's obviously better if somebody can stand there and point things out to you, but you know, we try to think it can stand somewhat on its own. Let's see, what did I leave out? I think I'm good. That's the end of the background. I also got the assignment of why should the museum stay where it is? And there, you know, these are going to be things that I can think of. There are going to be a lot of other people that are going to speak after me that will give you their own versions of this. So, and I haven't talked to any of them directly, so I don't really know what they're going to say. But I will say, we already have a museum, and we have a fine museum, and we like it where it is. We like what it does. We like what it represents. All of our exhibits are what I would call Generation 1. You know, we continue to tinker with them, and other archive items come in, and, you know, we look at ways to enhance them. I was in Europe a few weeks ago. I went to a lot of different museums. Every one I would go in, I'd look and think, now what can I see here that we might be able to use somewhere else? You know, a lot of people don't go to museums on their vacations, but I do. And I just, once you get the museum bug, you know, you just start going and try to learn. I will say the pandemic was not our friend. It wasn't a friend of anybody. We were clicking along, and then the pandemic hit, and you know, we have a what I'd call a senior aged board, and you know, we all stayed home, and we didn't accomplish a lot during the early pandemic days. It was only this past May and June we began having person-to-person, face-to-face board meetings. And, you know, I will also say the annex and move discussions haven't helped us either. They've distracted our time away. And I'd say they've had an impact on the enthusiasm that I talked about earlier. It's hard to be enthusiastic when somebody has said, guess what, guys, you're moving. You know, think about it, how any of our houses, when you're getting ready to move, you're not thinking about painting the bathroom anymore. You know, you're working on something else, but you're not going to paint the bathroom. Now, Main Street is important. It's where things happen in the city. There are going to be no music concerts, no Spring Fest, no parades down here at the new location. We get a lot of traffic from those events. Hundreds of people come in. Some come in for 5 minutes to go to the bathroom, and an hour later they leave because they got interested and they walk around. Some have left and go back and go get their spouse or their kids, and they bring them back in. Or they say, I'm coming back. Now, none of that's going to happen at the new location. Now, I've had 2 or 3 different little talks that I've written. What I'm going to quote here in a second came from another one. I don't have it here tonight, so I'm doing it from memory. But it relates to a little bit of what Miles talked about. I want you to pick your favorite phrase out of this and see what works from you. I'm going to go down and get some physical therapy, and then I'll run over to the museum and see what's going on. I'm going to go get my teeth cleaned, and then I'm going to go run over to the museum. I'm going to go walk on the Greenway early in the morning, and then I'm going to go check the museum and see what's going on. I just don't see those things happening. Yeah, there will be people here, granted, no doubt about that. But are those people going to be in the like mind to go look at museums? I don't know. I don't think so. You know, there are other things that provide some synergy. The Arts on the Greenway, you know, they have random events. You know, it would take some, and it could be done, coordination that we might get some cross traffic from them. I mean, I recognize that. But some of the others, yeah, there are people, and they are going to be walking by here, but they're not, you know, if I go get my teeth cleaned, that's what I want to do, get my teeth cleaned, and I'm going to go home. And I just don't think they're going to be museum candidates. This is something we need to do a little cross homework on. I think the new museum is going to be smaller. I mean, I personally went up and measured all the rooms. I didn't bring my little chart tonight, but I've gone through all of that, and I come up with different numbers. I think it's going to be smaller. I think I put up here, if you include the annex numbers, it's going to be 45% or so smaller. And if you ignore the annex, that's a done deal. It's going to be about, I think, 30% smaller. One of the big differences is when you did your calculations, the hallway was not recognized as an exhibit. We got a timeline on both sides of the hallway that talk about how Mount Holly progressed over the years. And it overlays public events, big events, on top of Mount Holly events. So people can learn what was going on in the world in Mount Holly and what was going on in the big world. And we had so many military uniforms donated. We've got 2 sitting out in the hallway. The chairs that you saw back at the back came out of the auditorium at East Gaston. So we've used the hallway as exhibit space, and it's a lot. You can't just say, we don't need that. The other thing that was on Miles's chart that struck me as interesting is talking about the big conference room and comparing it to the training room. Okay, fine. Why not throw the Grand Hall in there? That would make the number even bigger. I mean, those don't really need to be factored in one way or the other. We need big meeting space. We have it there. You would have it down here. It's not really, to me, part of the calculation of whether the museum's going to be bigger or smaller. And there's some other differences that we could probably sit down and talk through. So is somebody, and I was one that I participated in most all of the individual exhibits designs. We would meet every Thursday, week after week after week, and decide what to do. And we struggled with what do you show, what can you not show, what's important to show. And we handcrafted the exhibits to fit the rooms that are there. And we left out things. If we're going to be smaller, and I think we are, what's going to get left out next go round? If my number's anywhere close to right, if we're going to be 30% smaller, does that mean 30% fewer artifacts? I don't know. Having taller ceilings, to me, works if you've got airplanes or dinosaurs like the Smithsonian. But I don't think we're going to be able to utilize those 13 feet. They're going to be there, but little kids are not going to be able to look way up and see what's up there. It is an interesting point, and maybe it will feel bigger because of the higher ceilings, but I don't personally feel like that's going to be useful for exhibit design. Because of the proposed location, I personally feel that visitors are going to be less. So So I think the visitors will go down, and over time, I think that enthusiasm I spoke about earlier is going to go down. And I think commitment of volunteers will go down. If you come, and I've done this, if you sit as a docent and very few people come in, it's disheartening. And, you know, if you get a few, or week after week after week, you know, you get less enthusiasm. It's like, why am I doing this? Why am I beating my head against the wall? So I think there are going to be fewer people. We're going to be further away from downtown. Granted, I wish we had more people coming in. We need to investigate and explore as many options as we can to get more people in the museum. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I mean, we all would agree with that. It'd be good. We'd rather have our works exposed to people than not. So anyway, to me, this is the bottom line. We're talking about spending considerable dollars from the city. They're precious dollars. There's not just an empty pocketbook sitting around. It's the city of Mount Holly citizens' dollars that we're talking about here. So do we want to spend considerable money for fewer visitors and smaller exhibits? I don't think this is the best use of city dollars and volunteer time. So that's the end. I did decide that I'm going to sign up for a 3-minute thing, because what I've been talking about is from my board experience and my president experience. And when I do the 3-minute thing in a little bit, I want to talk about it as my personal views as a citizen. And I think now is to turn it over to Mr. Brown.
Is he still with the Historical Society?
Who, me?
Right, I know you are, but we had on our agenda that I'm just making sure.
What?
So you're gonna present as well for the Historical Society? Okay.
Yes, and Mayor, as far as this has disrupted our first board meeting. We were trying to do officers. We got 5 new board members. We were going to do the officers, but this subject here, we didn't get to vote them. So until we vote a president, I guess I'm still it. So, and not that I hadn't tried. I mean, 3 years. I've been trying to get fired. I tried to get impeached. I tried to quit, and they wouldn't let me do it. So,
Welcome to volunteer.
so at Duke Energy we call it voluntold.
Yeah, that's right.
But anyway, I'm Richard Brown, y'all, and I'm for right now, I guess I'm president of the Historical Society. I'd like to thank the mayor and Miles and the council. I'd like to thank Jeremy and his staff for all their work in helping us, and everybody. And Marie, thanks for what you do. And I'd like to thank Melissa and Richard for organizing the enthusiastic patrons that we have that come up with this deal. You know, to start a committee to try to keep the museum on Main Street. And last but not least, I'd like to thank the members and the board members of the Mount Holly Historical Society. And I'd like to recognize all the board members. Can the board members please stand up and let's see who they are, past and present, doesn't matter. I want to see all the board members. To reiterate, that's what it's all about. All these people, I came along after I retired from Duke Energy, so I've been there 4 years. Those are the folks that built this museum. So, and they got all those hours in, so I'd like to thank them sincerely. And I'm going to kind of go over some of the same points that Miles had, of course, but a lot of it is just kind of a timeline of what way I remember it. And and me and Miles and Ivory worked together, and I've talked to all of y'all, I think, before. But anyway, I guess we'll start back the summer of 2019, late summer. Aaron Ball and Gary Brinkley, both past presidents, met with Danny Jackson and Billy Rick, and they toured the whole museum, and that's kind of when Mr. Rick got excited about buying the annex. So the following January, Billy had a PowerPoint presentation. I think it was a work session in here, and we kind of got wind of it. Gary and Archie came and witnessed that, and said, okay. So anyway, and then we talked about it, and we talked about some strategy, and we talked to Miles, I guess, and we talked about seeing if we could get council to, and the mayor's council to do their work session at the old chambers. And if y'all remember correctly, it was March 23rd. If y'all remember correctly, that was the day the city shut down because of COVID-19. So that never happened, and the reason we wanted y'all to come, because we want y'all to be well acquainted with all the exhibits, because, I'm not sure that y'all are acquainted with everything. I mean, we could give, and we still could give y'all the royal tour if y'all want to. But anyway, that was the idea behind that meeting, was to try to get y'all down there and see what these good folks have done for us, and what y'all facilitated too. So we didn't do that. We missed the opportunity there. And so we appreciate that try. We should have done it before. We should have tried to follow up when everything cleared out. Like I say, we were doing Zoom meetings till April of this year. So, and we didn't have our first in-person board meeting until May of this year. So I'm going to talk about when we started with the annex. We disassembled the 1950s exhibit. I don't know if y'all remember that. It was a bunch of things about the 1950s, about a bunch of pictures, and had newspapers and all this. We had that exhibit. We moved it out of the main lobby to move it in the annex, and then we had to remove we had to move the Dr. Dennis pharmacy room, and then we had to then we moved all the hard copy books from the Lieutenant Commander Edward Johnson Ryan Research Library, and so we couldn't move the old Mount Holly News because we arranged with Billy Rick to build us some new shelves in the meeting room. So they kind of sat there for a while, and Billy locked the door, and Gary went over and says, well, we still got to have access to these, because that was our research library. We have the Ancestry there, we have the Fold 3 there on the computer, and so, it's kind of took us aback because he wasn't letting people go in. So we had access to that. So, and then we moved those, when we talked about, and then Billy, bought the annex, and so we had a timetable to move the stuff. So we had a meeting on February 8th. We met with Miles, I guess. We talked about starting to move, and Jeremy, I think, we might have been there. Started talking about our moving process, and then we talked about and then we started discussing, how we're going to do this. So we had a work day. We got Miles got us some stickers from the guy that was doing the moving. The city contracted the mover to move all this stuff, because, the age of our board, we're not much on moving. So, these were young guys, so there's a lot of stuff. And so we labeled what what was going to stay, and we came up with a strategy. There's some big heavy shelves down in the back room, of our archives down in the basement. So we decided to remove all that stuff, and then take the barber chairs out, and that's a couple other things out of the barber exhibit, and so then we erected those shelves up there, and then we moved all the paper stuff that we weren't sure of the space. And I think me and Jeremy's been over a couple times. I think it's a conditioned space, but we hold all the NIMS letters and all those postcards from them. We got all the May Tucker stuff, and all the paper stuff is dear. Plus, we have the original soda fountain mirror from Holland's Drugs. That's probably one of and that was going up in the annex. If y'all if we hadn't sold it, but it's a real nice, probably one of the nicest pieces we have. So it's in the barber room, and so we moved that stuff, and then I think on the 7th, then I guess y'all had your retreat on the 25th of February, and then we met with Miles and Ivory at the museum that's when they revealed that, we were going, the idea of relocating the museum to the municipal complex. And Gary and I voiced our initial objections for several reasons, including what Gary said. Our museum, the existing museum, is pretty much complete. The loss of exhibit space, and fewer patrons, and plus I feel like, when you do like the upset, the apple cart like that, you kind of lose people. People bring stuff in every Saturday, and we assess them do the documentation to turn them over to the city. So every Saturday we're always getting pictures, and we're trying to make sure we do them right, because Alice and I have a bunch of pictures in our drawers, and some of our ancestors, and we don't know who they are. So it's important to write names on the back of pictures, y'all. So anyway, so we kind of voiced our objections initially to the move when we first found out about it, didn't we, Ivor? So we didn't care for it at all. So anyway, then we April 8th, I think we proposed the new location. We visited the location, like Miles said in his timeline, and viewed the space. And I think we again kind of voiced our objections. And I think in March 17th and 18th, that's when we had the wild moving everything out to the remote location, and all the boxes up to the barber room, and that was a zoo. That was fun. Gary took Friday, and Gary took Thursday, and I took Friday. So, in case they had any questions. So that was pretty much it for the annex, except for the Mount Holly News. So, and then we forgot to clean out the closet in there that used to be a bathroom in the annex, and so it had all that paint and stuff over there. So we had to move it somewhere. So it was quite a day. Quite 2 days. So, saying all that, then on July 29th, I received the request for qualifications for the new architecture, and then I think Brian may have sent that, Brian DuPont, assistant city manager. So on August 1st, the Historical Society, we decided we talked about all since May, June, and then in July we says, are we gonna do anything about? Are we gonna say anything about objecting formally to the council and the mayor? And so we decided to craft a letter, and we sent it out on August 1st. And every one of y'all supposedly got a copy. And I talked to a couple council people, and they remember Miles forwarded it to them in an email, but I'm not sure any of y'all, do y'all remember getting a formal letter from us?
Got a few recently.
It looks like this.
Feeling good.
Do y'all remember getting a letter? Because if you don't, the post office is not working, because I mailed it from Mount Holly. So anyway, that was our first objection. The only one that answered was Miles. So we expected we'd get somebody to reach out to us then, but that didn't happen. So, and that's part of our issues. We don't communicate very well. I mean, I know y'all busy, but we expected somebody to say, let's talk. And so that was on. So like I said, two of them said they didn't think they got it. On August 9th, we held a board meeting, and that's when Melissa had started this new committee of patrons. And due to our relationship with the city of Mount Holly, I told our board that I wouldn't be attending those meetings, and I asked them to do the same, because we felt like this is an independent group, and we should and the board should hold our powder dry, more or less. Because, it's just because of the relationship we have with y'all. And so anyway, that was on the 9th, our first board meeting in August, and we were getting ready. And so all that was going on. This is going on. We elected 5 new board members. We had to go through 10 people to get 5. Year before last, we got all 4 in one go. So it's just different every year, elected board members. And we got a list that's ongoing. There's a bunch of people on this list that we, kind of classify, and then we reach out to them. Some of them want to be, some of them don't. So that's just an ongoing thing. Let's say I met with Jeremy and we walked the museum down on the 15th of August, and and there was an engineer with him from, I guess, the same company, some contractor engineer, and she, walked the space down to the museum, and we came down here and she looked at the spaces, and so that was one more thing we did. And then on the 17th, I guess, Melissa's group they had planned to come to council's meeting and do 3-minute speeches, and I guess y'all got wind of that. So, and I was over my PT at Presbyterian, and I got an email from my office. They've heard your voice. I said, what voice? I said, I must say the letter. So, evidently, y'all got wind of it, and you decided, the mayor and the council decided to do this, the town hall, and so that was good. So, and we talked about keeping the museum open more, and I've heard that be a talking point. And so, the way I understand it, there's 4 past presidents, including myself, that have discussed it with the president, the president, city manager, and Danny, and to have somebody that had a job that allowed them to work down at the museum. So it just kind of never went anywhere. We all the different presidents talked about that, but it's, we want to be open more, but we're just a limited group of old folks that try to do their best to do the docent list. And from this, I want to get some docents out of this crowd right here. I need a list of y'all. I think we always need new docents. We can stay open more, but y'all talk about in this that we could maybe have somebody remote. Well, the pandemic kind of teaches you, well, if you can do that, if you can do that here, you can do it remotely. Somebody could do a job remotely to try to keep the museum open more. So anyway, we try to, even though we discussed it, it went nowhere. And I'm not going to talk about the MOU. I will talk about, and I think y'all had a thing about the MOU about how, I guess when Mr. Michaels drew it up, he talked the existing boards from the initial MOU, talked about how well the boards had done over. The city was glad how much the work they had done in the 3 years from 2011. So, and that. So anyway. But anyway, but I'm sure we'll have a new. Marie's probably already got several new MOUs drafted up. I don't know. But anyway, the MOU is a fluent document, and it'll be changed at any time. Supposedly, if we're in agreement, the way the initial MOU, was written, like we have to be in agreement. So, but anyway, in closing, I'd like to thank the mayor again, and I'd like to thank council and Miles for holding this town hall, all the patrons of the Historical Society Museum for keeping the museum on Main Street. We believe the communication with the city and the Historical Society definitely needs to be enhanced. And this is the first step, I think. So our deepest fear is that the change of location will result in the diminished archive donations, the loss of traffic, and hopefully it doesn't what happens to the Discovery U doesn't happen to us, because they couldn't make, and their big organization, Caramon, and here we are, a little old historical society. So that's our fear. But our most sincere hope that we will all realize that the city museum is a jewel in this crown of Mount Holly. So, and we'd like for y'all to reconsider your decision to relocate the Historical Society Museum. And I appreciate your time. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Richard. I'm going to do this one.
Let me bring it over here.
We're going to take 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Because
5 minutes, Mayor.
some of us need to go to the bathroom. So we're going to take 5
I understand. 5 minutes.
If I say 5 minutes again, it'll be Hey, bud. What? Everybody start making your way back, please. I stole a microphone so I would have one.
Hey, I was heard from back in here.
Brian, we have 3 over here. Like, we could easily share.
All right, we're going to start the meeting back. If everybody will take your seats, we'll go ahead and get started. I've been informed that bedtime is coming up for some people.
I gotta drive to Mooresville.
What?
I gotta drive to Mooresville. I have to dog sit. Tonight?
Is it dark? I gotta go.
There won't be any traffic.
Yeah, but I don't see good at night.
That's right.
Don't have to be no
At least I don't
traffic.
have to drive far.
Melissa, we're waiting on you. We can't get started without you. You're up next. Oh, you're going next.
We just wanted.
Are you both doing it? Are you both going to speak? It's good to know. All right. We're back in order. I will turn it over. I'm sorry. Are you guys finished? Okay. I'm going to turn it over. Presentation from Save the Museum. Keep it where it is. Whatever. We understand. You're up.
Okay, can everybody hear me? I heard somebody say they couldn't hear in the back a while ago, so maybe I won't be too loud. Okay, I'm Richard Thompson, and this is my wife, Melissa. We are going to represent the Leave It As Is Committee, if you want to call it that.
I will change the name on the agenda.
But anyway, I'm going to shorten what I was going to say. I'm glad I get to go first. Normally when I go somewhere with her, I don't get to say too many words. So I'm going to take advantage of it. Anyway, I want to thank Mr. Mayor and the council for letting us have this opportunity tonight. I also want to thank Jim Love, and for him doing this book right here, which I referenced. If you folks are not familiar with it, pick up one at some point in time, because I got a lot of information that we're going to show. Matter of fact, that's Melissa's great-grandfather's store right there on the cover. Okay. I'm going to try to be a little bit quicker and miss some of the stuff. Since we've been talking history tonight, let me share a small history lesson for some of you folks that might not be from this area. And taking old Barney Fife's idea, nip it in the bud, I think that's what we need to be doing. And just out of curiosity, how many people are here tonight for the Save the Museum Where It Is position? I'd say that might be, well, I don't know how many seats you got in here, but I'd say about every one of them. Anyway, if things continue in the direction they're going, I've got a little exhibit right here for you. This might go back a couple hundred years, but how many of you recognize what this is? You headed straight into a hornet's nest. And if you want to go back and look up Mr. Cornwallis and see what he said about this area, we don't want to repeat history, I know. Also, the resistance you've seen today with these people is kind of like being in Florida at Cocoa Beach tonight. Maybe it's more relevant, because if you go out on the beach, you might go out there and see a ripple of water maybe 6 or 8 inches high and from the Gulf. But if you go out there 3 days from now, that's what it's going to be like down the road. With that being said, Back in 2013, we began formulating the needs to expand the museum, which would include the annex. And let me just read a memo to file from back in 2013. Well, I'll just paraphrase it. Thanks to the generous support of City of Mount Holly, we're able to do blah, blah, blah. Schools, the exhibit rooms of schools, doctors, and drugstores, textile mill, downtown variety and department stores, civic entities, the barber shop, and military and fallen heroes. And we're all working on the remaining room as a library where we will store books, videos, photos, and maps. Visitors and members will be able to research town history. Future plans. Starting in June, we plan to open the museum once a month for 3 hours. Remember, this is back in 2013. 3 hours on a regular work day, the third Saturday of each month. This will coincide with Mount Holly Farmers Market, which draws the good crowds to downtown. In the fall, we plan to contact Mount Holly Middle School and Ida Rankin School to discuss providing museum tours for school groups. We would also like to be able to develop the following displays from Mount Holly's museum: churches and cemeteries, homes and rooms from the 1800s to 1900s, genealogy, black history, working with Black History Forum, sports history, working with Sports Hall of Fame, police department with the old jail, PNN Railroad, Duke Power. Okay, we saw the need for additional space, and we said if we could have some more room, for example, someone from the Lutheran Church has mentioned that the church officials have discussed donating their original pre-1900 pump organ to the Mount Holly Historical Society. Unfortunately, we are running out of space to display additional donations or to store them in a controlled environment. We're limited to the main floor of the town hall. The basement of the building does not have the proper heating and air conditioning and accumulates moisture and damage to those acquisitions. The upper floor is being used by the city and does not have secure stairs. We do not want to have to turn down historic artifacts because we do not have anywhere to put them, put them properly. Does the city have any help for us? Let me share one small detail with you, the aspect of these needs. Mount Holly's connection to those needs through our military personnel and sacrifices and exhibits. Go to the next one. But first, let me give you a brief introduction to the Thompson family here in Mount Holly over the past 150 years, and you'll see how this plays into it later on. Next picture. Well, they're all dead and gone, to be honest. Next.
We saw that one.
Okay. On the front right is my grandfather, T.H. Thompson. On the far left is my great uncle, Ed Thompson. Why am I telling you about this? Ed Thompson was a police chief here in town from 1913 to 1928. His picture used to hang on the wall in Town Hall maybe 20 years ago, but where is it now? We'd like to have that in the archives. That's why we strive to have an organized artifacts collection. We're losing the space for exhibits and collections, and this question will be frequently asked. Okay, my Uncle Ed there on the lower left had two sons, Dick, who coached football in both Mount Holly and Stanley, and his football helmet hangs on the wall in the museum. And also, that was a football team back in, I don't know, a long time ago. It looks more like a baseball glove to me than something you put on your head. J.B. served in World War II as a B-29 pilot. He later owned, next slide, he later owned Mount Holly Ice and Fuel, which to me, I enjoyed his ice cold watermelons more than anything else. But anyway, these people were founders in some of the historical parts of Mount Holly. And the ice plant, for those of you not from here, used to be right down the hill here, between here and the bottom of the hill. I was going to talk more about that, but like I say, I want to skim over some of this. Next slide. Another beloved man you will find here in Mount Holly was Willie Burt Ryan. I know you probably can't see this caption, but it says, "Today is my 100th birthday." And he devoted that to Melissa and me. He served throughout World War II in the Navy, fighting many battles in the Pacific. He said that he was honored to be on the destroyer O'Bannon, which not only earned 17 battle stars along with Presidential Unit Citation, but was also one of 3 destroyers to escort the battleship Missouri into the Tokyo Bay for the peace signing. Willie Burt and his wife Ruby had 2 sons that both served careers in the Navy. I was in the Scouts with both, Buddy and Eddie. Eddie was promoted to lieutenant commander where he retired. He later died. Willie Burt wanted to do something for his son here in Mount Holly. He donated several $1,000s to help develop a memorial library here in the museum. Shown in the picture is Eddie's wife along with Willie Burt. Also shown, next slide, is the plaque that in his memory as part of the memorial. Willie Burt gave over $3,000 to help promote this library. This library has already been packed up and boxed up, and we don't know if and when it will ever be seen again. I'm sorry about that, Willie Burt. When someone from the council said that the annex wasn't part of the museum, it was taken down and dismantled, possibly never to be seen again. I wouldn't want to be the docent when Willie Burt's grandchildren come in there and say, "Can we see his memorial?" Well, we don't know where it is. We don't know when it'll be put back up. The annex was sold, so, and we don't know what's going to happen.
His granddaughter's here tonight.
That's good. Thank you. Thank you. We've seen Melanie. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. I could go on and on. Next. Here's a picture of Jack Warren's barber shop. He also served in World War II. And here's a more recent. Next slide. Oh. That's the only one you got. Anyway, that was that was Joy giving our students a tour of the museum. And they walked down from Ida Rankin, by the way. Okay, another is Dr. Stroop's examining room. It's already been packed up to be moved. Well, it already has been moved, I guess. So a lot of these rooms that we have been having displays in already are boxed up, and we don't know when they'll be opened up again. Another one, Dickie Leonard donated his grandfather's World War I uniform that had been in his family for over 100 years. Dr. Stroop's daughter gave her, okay, skip that part. There's probably more people in this room, well, that's going back to the barber shop, that got their first haircut from Jack Warren. His barber chair had to be moved to a storage unit because the annex was sold and there's no room to put it anywhere else. The proposed space is even less than what we have now. I believe Dickie Leonard is in the room. We appreciate your consideration on your, and I believe you said that that uniform has his blood on it. Can you speak up?
It's where he would want it to be. I've discussed for a long time where to put it.
Okay, we're not going to have comments from the audience. I love you, Mr. Leonard. I hate to interrupt you.
I understand.
What's that?
I said, he asked me, I was gonna.
No, I understand.
Okay.
We're not doing that.
I got you.
Okay, this is a council meeting.
I got you.
We're going to keep it between us, and then everybody's going to have an opportunity to speak.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, I too have a military career with 27 years of service, and I've recently found out that I am honored to have my name on one of the bricks in the Veterans Healing Garden. This is a project the Historical Society took on at quite an expense, honoring the veterans that have served from Mount Holly. It has taken many hours of volunteer work with many and more to go. This is something the city should memorialize forever, but will it? I'm just glad to know that this Memorial Gardens is on private property of Rodney Williams. Otherwise, you folks someday might want to maybe rent out a space to park all the food trucks on it. If you want to do something to help the citizens of Mount Holly, why not build a discovery place for kids to come like the one in Huntersville, or let the CRO move into the Grand Hall where they can help the needy in Mount Holly? You can use the money that would be spent on redesign of the smaller museum at the Grand Hall on a lift to the second floor of the current museum space and make it ADA compliant. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next.
Okay.
It's hung on the thing down there, but I think she'll be okay. There we go. Yep, there we go.
Okay. I'm Melissa Thompson. I started the Save the Museum or Don't Move the Museum group. Mimi Love Ewan and I did. A few months ago, I found out that the museum was slated to be moved over here. And on the 4th of July, I had a lady from Belmont, a couple of people come over. She was with the Historical Society over there and the DAR and all of these other historical groups that she's been part of. She's 90-something years old. And we just happened to mention that the museum was supposed to move. And she says, oh no, everybody in Belmont is jealous of Mount Holly because of their museum. They think it's wonderful. Why would you want to do that? And so I thought about it for a while and I said, I don't know. But I talked to some people and found out there were a lot of people that were upset. There were a lot of people who were very upset. People who have a lot of memories. Every time they go in there, they see things they can't see anywhere else that remind them of their childhood and what they grew up with and the people they grew up with. So I called one of them, Mimi Love Ewan, and I said, Mimi, what do you think about that? And she says, it's awful. She says, let's do something. So anyway, we got together a lot of other people that thought that it wasn't the greatest idea in the world, and we decided to try to present a case to keep it where it is, and that's what we've been working on for several months now, a couple of months at least. So one of the things we decided to do was see what we could find out about the reasoning behind it. And do that, we looked online at various social media, and we looked at newspapers and any other memorandum we could get to sort of find out the thought that went into deciding to move the museum. One of the things that we found was a social media last week from Town Talk. And it said, we legally accepted an offer for a building that does not house the museum. And in thinking of that, that was in reference to the annex. That the whole comment was about the annex. I think there was an issue that started it about the method in which it was sold, but that was the comment, as if it was not part of the museum. We had several exhibits there that Richard and some of the others have mentioned. And when we lost the annex, we calculated the space to be 954 square feet in exhibits and 668 square feet used for storage. There's a lot of numbers going around, but that's a lot to lose in exhibits. One of them was a library that Willie Burt donated. The other was a medical dental exhibit. Dr. Stroop's examining table, a dental cabinet, and these are all transferred down to the storage building down the road. And maybe some of the more, I guess, fragile artifacts were kept in the museum. But anyway, that was a meaningful place to people to do research. There is no Mount Holly News anymore. On Fridays, there were some regulars that would come down to the museum every week. He'd come in, he'd speak to everybody that was a docent that day, and then they would just go down to the library and look at the old Mount Holly News. That was their ritual on Saturday. We also had, I believe it was a small computer. People could use that to look things up. The picture you have here is Gloria Mack. When we gave one of the tours, she has a whole little area full of third graders who had never heard of the Mount Holly News. And she's showing them what our newspaper has in it. One of the projects that we have been working on that we don't have the funding for yet is to digitize the Mount Holly News. That would be of tremendous value to people around here because they are fragile. They go back to the 1940s, and you have to be careful with them. But that was a great thing that we had right there in the museum was the library that Willie Burt helped build, and we miss it. There are a lot of numbers that have come out tonight, and I'm not that great and fond of dealing with numbers, but one of the things I did to look at what the impact of moving would be was I got these numbers, except for the very top one, out of a document that they used from the City Council retreat document of February 2002. So since that's what it came out of, I'm assuming that is formed the basis for the discussions about moving the museum. That these were the actual numbers that were used that day. And on there, this is their wording, I have quotation marks. It said that space used by Historical Society to be replaced at Municipal Complex. It says there it was 3,500 square feet, okay? Says that the space at Municipal Complex, including part of a vestibule, would be 2,188. That's a big difference. You know, if you've got 3,500 over there on the, you know, and then you move it down to 2,188 in here. And that was not counting the 1,622 square feet that was used for the research library and the exhibits in the annex. So that's why our group thought that we were losing a lot of space. And this came from the document I got as the reference material used for your discussions when you decided to move them. So if you're looking at something that goes to what we have now, down significantly, that's very discouraging, and that's what made a lot of people very concerned about moving it. That's a big differential. So those numbers, they could be wrong, but this was presented as what you used to do your evaluations. Okay. This briefly refers back to a statement in the Gazette that said, it is important to city leaders, the local history is important, and they want to continue to grow through the museum. Okay, that was in the Gazette last Friday. All right. The way our group sees it is there's not much potential for growth. If you take away thousands of square feet currently used for exhibits, squeeze them into a smaller area, how are you going to grow? You can see what happened when the annex left. There's Joy giving the little school kids a tour of Jack Warren's barber shop, but there are other barbers too, and we don't want to forget. We represented the other barbers in town. I think they were the carpenters, and I don't remember. I didn't go to the barber shop, but I know there are others. And on the right, you see what it looks like now, and that's because you didn't have enough space for everything, and you had to put boxes in there to keep them safe, and you lost the barber exhibit. So that's directly because of the sale of the annex. Okay. Our group is afraid that the museum will slowly die like the other businesses at that location. Okay? We've already talked about, what was it, the Discovery U that was there. To us, this area is a remote area. I mean, people keep talking about, yeah, there's Greenway and there's that. But how many people never, ever come down here except to talk about their water bill? Ever? My dentist isn't here. I don't ride down this street for any reason, even though we have a house across the road over there. We don't ever come down here. I never see any foot traffic when we ride down here. There are not as many businesses here as there are downtown. They're not people who just go down there to go to Jack Biggles and then walk by on a Saturday morning and come in. We wouldn't be able to participate in downtown events. We do that now. Whenever you have a concert on Friday night, there we are. When you have a festival, there we are. The school tours. Delana Furr worked very hard getting a relationship with the local schools. She taught here, they know her, she knows how to talk to them, and she got an arrangement with the schools to where kids from Ida Rankin could come down to the museum and take a tour. They can walk. We've got a picture of them. There they are. They walked right down Central Avenue, took a right, and then walked across the street excited to go see what was in the museum. If they were to come down in this area, they would have to schedule bus trips. Okay, Gaston County has lots of buses, but you have to schedule that, and it's not easy. For one class of third graders, we had 150 kids that walked down the street. How many buses would it take to take them down here? How many drivers would it take? What kind of scheduling would you have to bring, that many children down here? It'd be very difficult, because we've talked about having some other schools do that, and we know the kind of issues that come up with that. A few years ago, we were told that it was proposed for the library to move down here, and we were told also that the parents and the people came up and decided that they wanted to protest that. They didn't want their children walking down here after school to the library. They like it where it's close to where they go to school over on Hawthorne Street or on Central Avenue. And so they thought it was better where it was. And that's where it is today. And we have the same feelings about moving down here. We think that if we move, and if it closes for whoever knows how long that would be, that it'll be out of sight, out of mind. Nobody will even think about coming down here because it's not part of your regular movement around town. Okay. We've been very good stewards of the archives. People have talked about that before. It was mentioned in this city council retreat document that there would provide protection of historic archives and a sprinkler system. A sprinkler system's not really good for a lot of fragile items that we have. From experts who know more than I do, like Richard and Gary, we're told that other methods are much better to preserve archives than having them be have water poured on them. So anyway, that's not a really good idea. We've spent a lot of time acquiring our archives over the past few years. A lot of them were not people just walk in and say, I have something I'd like you to take a look at. A lot of times we knew people in town like Alan Craig, who donated a lot of the school material, archives we have. Went over to his house and talked about it. And he decided he'd donate the bell, the clock, a lot of books that he had on school teachers that were there when we went to school. The Love family gave a piano that had been in their family since the 1850s, Jim. Okay? We have valuable archives that families trusted the museum to turn them over. Vintage uniforms like Mr. Leonard had here. And when they do that, they know that you may not always display them. Maybe it would be periodic or rotating or something like that. But they know you're going to take care of them, and they trust us. Since people have found out about the museum moving, I've had donors tell me, former donors, that they would never, ever give us anything else. They would not donate to the museum. And they, you know, in the past they have, but they say they would not do it now. I don't know if they're going to ask for what they gave back or not, but that's what they said. And attracting new donors will be harder. And that'll be an issue altogether. Where would you put things if they gave them to you? If you've already been downsized by the percentage that we anticipate we'll lose space, where would you put any archives? You know, just hire or rent a lot of storage buildings down the road? I don't know. So that's going to be an issue. What would you do with all the archives that there's no room for here? Okay. There's a statement in the, what is it? There it is. The retreat document that talks about synergy for collaboration with the Arts on the Greenway and the Police Department Memorial. We already have collaboration downtown. Annually, we sponsor a Veterans Day program at the First Presbyterian Church where they read out the names of Mount Holly veterans. And then they have a reception at the museum. The Historical Society sponsors an annual Black History program at the First Presbyterian Church. I think we also have reception after that. That picture shows Reverend Herman Thomas. He was one of the original Freedom Riders and was at the lunch counter in Greensboro in the 1960s. And he's also a professor at UNC Charlotte and a minister at a Baptist church over in Charlotte. He gave a wonderful program. We also collaborate with the downtown to have the Veterans Healing Garden with the bricks that Richard talked about. And we collaborate with the schools to have tours at the downtown museum. So I think that we're already doing a lot of that. And what we do with them is very visible, you know. They're well attended when we have these events, and people know that that's what we're doing. Okay. One of the other items discussed at length was the open floor plan and blank canvas for the room that's been allocated down here. We already have wonderful exhibits that Gary talked about how much time has been put into them, how much work has gone into them. In a lot of cases, as you see here, they've been built into the structure that's already there, historic structure. That looks like what you expect to see in a museum when you're talking about the mill, in the mill room where you look in the right-hand corner. That shows a group of mill people through a window. I've known people who came down here to just see if they recognized somebody that was in those pictures because their families worked in the mills here. This this was the basis for Mount Holly economy. That's the Mill Village with the little circular window. That was constructed by people here using their own hammers and nails, I guess. Did you bring your own hammer, Gary? Huh? No, you didn't. Okay. And then the window on the left is the one that shows downtown Mount Holly in the early 1900s. And it looks right in that window on Main Street. Okay. And we talked some about the staffing, that we could do the staffing, you know, where we are. It would be really neat to have a tourist office of sorts sit there where someone could be in the, you know, sort of a small chamber of commerce telling you people what else you can do in Mount Holly. And they certainly would have traffic walking down the street. That's what people are going to do. They're going to come downtown to go visit the town and eat or whatever, shop. They could come into the museum and find out what else there is to do. Okay, to summarize, we don't think that there is a benefit because I've discussed what they said the benefits were, and I really don't think that we have those benefits. That the museum space would be severely downsized. We wouldn't have any room for growth, nowhere to put new artifacts. Our collaborations right now are very visible with the town. No need to redesign and spend money redoing excellent exhibits. And we feel that we would attract many fewer visitors in this area. And that the volunteers would become discouraged and would quit. So we really, really beg you not to relocate the museum and to keep it where it is.
All right, thank you. Next is public comment. I need somebody to bring me the public comment sign-up sheet. All right. If you want to continue to speak, that's fine. If you feel like the last 2 hours has covered what you wanted to say, you don't have to speak, but everybody's welcome, okay? It's 3 minutes, okay? All I ask is just respect 3 minutes. I don't want to have to interrupt anybody that may have taught me history or any of that. Y'all understand? It's not easy for me to interrupt somebody because I don't want to. But when it's 3 minutes, I'm going to let you know it's 3 minutes. And all I ask is respect the next person that's on the list, okay? And if I mispronounce a name, I truly apologize. The people are going to do public comment will come to this microphone. I'll call out your name, speak for 3 minutes, and then we'll go to the next person. Joey Walker.
Make it 3 minutes. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, and staff. My name is Joy Henderson Walker. I was born and raised in Mount Holly. I grew up on the old 27 highway, which is about 2 miles from out of town. And matter of fact, it's a rural area. And now the name of that area is called West Creek. We used to call it 27. I also attended the Mount Holly City Schools. In 2018, I was invited to join the Mount Holly Historical Society. I served for 4 years, and one of those years was vice president of the Mount Holly Historical Society. And I was liaison between the Mount Holly Historical Society and the Black Forum. I also volunteered with the Black Forum. I'm here this evening because I am a person who very much believes in the preservation of history. In the beginning, the archives were stored and some displayed upstairs in this very building. It had very little exposure. And now today, you want to bring us back here. to this same building. Now that we have the opportunity to move in town, organize, and properly exhibit donated items collected by volunteers. The museum has gained interest from all over. The school children have come over on a field trip. People from out of town, out of state, come and mingle in town. Our diversity has been a work in process. My hope for the future is that you will give us the opportunity to keep growing and be diversified. In observance of Memorial Day in May, the museum honors our veterans by going to every local cemetery and placing a flag on the veteran's grave. At Christmas, a wreath is placed at the entrance of the cemeteries. The museum honors all senior citizens with a luncheon, a home-cooked meal provided by the Mount Holly Historical Society volunteers. By leaving the museum where it is located at 131 South Main Street, many people will learn of Ramseur Hunter, who lived in Mount Holly, a free man of color.
Ma'am, that's the time. That's 3
Okay.
minutes.
He
Thank you.
He donated land and school.
Thank you.
To Mount Holly.
Thank you very much. Nancy Wren.
Mayor and City Council, thank you for allowing us this time to have a voice. My name is Nancy Wren. I am a new board member of the Mount Holly Historical Society, but I'm not new to Mount Holly. I was born and raised in the town of Mount Holly, as well as my parents and my grandparents on both sides of my family. My children and my grandchildren have grown up in this community. I tell you this so that you know that the history of this town is precious to me for 4 generations. I don't know how much time that you have taken to come to visit our museum. Some of you may not even live in Mount Holly, but if you have visited, then you know that our museum is second to none in Gaston County, which is something I know that you're proud of. The very building that you want us to move out of is historical in itself because it's where your history began. The citizens before you carried out the city's work in this building. When people visit the museum, I tell them, this building is where our town hall was. That's why it's the perfect place for the history of our town. We have proudly honored the written agreement that they have been talking about. We've displayed the archives. We're the caretakers. We take in donations and log them in. And the most important thing that we do is share the history of Mount Holly with the citizens of this town and others. With that being said, I would like to quote you just a portion of that agreement. Whereas the city recognizes the substantial achievement of the Mount Holly Historical Society in providing the preservation of the archives and creating an environment which enhances the public's ability to view and appreciate the history of the city. In order to enhance the ability of this view and appreciate the history of our city, the museum needs to stay on Main Street to be closer to the center of the activity of our town in order to meet and greet the public and to satisfy this portion of the agreement. I know you are proud of our museum, just like all of us fighting to save it. And when we lose our visitors, I'm afraid that our museum, along with the town's history, will no longer exist. Please pause your intentions for more time for us to share with you some ideas that we have that may benefit both the city and the museum. I'm asking you, City Council and Mayor, to reconsider all that has been said tonight, to revisit that vote that happened without any input or consideration of our feelings, and give us your unanimous support to keep our Mount Holly history alive on Main Street, the place where our museum deserves to be located. Thank you.
Thank you. Angela Blackwood.
Good evening. My name is Angela Blackwood, and I am a citizen of Mount Holly, a resident of Mount Holly. I've heard a lot of what I already have been talked about is something I had listed. So I think I'll skip a little bit of how the city looked to the Mount Holly Historical Society as a custodian for the museum, for the artifacts that they have gathered, and just go down and it's already been asked, and I think from the response that most of you are in favor of supporting the museum, that most of you have been to the museum and would agree that it is really a fantastic place. It is truly something to be proud of. If you haven't gone, then you really should. It recognizes our history, our citizens, our businesses, the mills, the schools, our athletes, the churches, various community organizations, our veterans. It's pretty much all-encompassing, and we should be proud of it. People have said that the museum is only open 4 hours a week, but that's really not the case. The museum is open many additional hours. It is open for the programs that you mentioned, the ones for the students, the school children, the other groups, including the Veterans Day program, et cetera. So it's often opened much more than 4 hours a week. The museum, I think the people who have worked with the museum need to be complimented for the hours that they have spent, the enthusiasm they have put into the work that they have done, and the product that they have actually developed. So I think, again, it's something to be proud of. Again, tomorrow night at 7 p.m., the museum is sponsoring a guest speaker, Colonel Henry Hayes. He is served as the senior chaplain in the U.S. Army. He was in the Pentagon on 9/11, and his topic will be Heroes in Our Midst. You are all welcome to attend. The museum has already been downsized with the sale of the annex, which you've mentioned. If moved, the museum would be further downsized. I think most of us here have been making that argument. What is more important to the city than this museum? Some people don't know Mount Holly has a historical museum. I don't think that's as surprising as we might initially think, but the city could help change this by including information on museum's activities in its monthly newsletter. As I see it, the city has made a commitment to support this museum, which has proven to be a suitable repository for the protection and display of our city artifacts. In both the letter and the spirit of that agreement, I think the city should keep the museum where it is.
Thank you, Angela.
Location, location.
Colston Hildebrand.
Thank you for letting me speak tonight. My name is Colston Hildebrand. I'm 10 years old and a student at Ida Rankin Elementary School. I'm in Miss Lockridge's class. I love the museum and have been several times. I like that it is free so that all people will be able to visit. I really like the schoolroom. It shows me how much the desks have changed and how the report cards were written by hand and everything was written on an old chalkboard. I also bought a book about the history of the museum. I took it to class to read my reading flex time. My teacher asked me what book I was reading. I told her it was a book about the history of Mount Holly. I asked her, did you know that Mount Holly used to be called Woodlawn? She did not know that. I told her the museum is open on Saturdays and she should come see all the rooms. The people at the museum are kind and helpful. Mr. Richard Brown took me on a tour of the military room. I love learning about each uniform dating back to World War I and the names of the people that wore them. I also enjoyed hearing about the medals on the uniforms. My great-grandfather's picture is also in this room. In the past, my school was invited to schedule a field trip to visit the museum. They walked from the school downtown to the museum. Due to COVID, I missed getting to go on the field trip. I would like to be able to walk to the museum with my class one day. If the museum is moved away from Main Street, it would not be safe for us to go. I also walked with my Mimi in the community foundation run that was held every year in Gastonia, starting at the Honey Hunters baseball field. I wanted to help raise money for the museum so that the history of Mount Holly can be shared with everyone. When I heard that the city voted to move the museum, I wanted to let you know that I feel the museum should be on Main Street so that my school will be able to walk on our field trip. I think the people shopping and eating downtown would visit the museum. I also think that the museum should stay in the old town of Hall building where the history of Mount Holly started long ago. Thanks for listening.
Caitlin Connors. Caitlin Connors.
Hi, good evening. My name is Caitlin Connors. Unlike most of you here, I'm a fairly new resident of Mount Holly. My family and I moved here about a year ago. And the museum was kind of the first way that we got to learn a little bit about Mount Holly and the new place where we were living. Just like Melissa said, we do like to go over to Troust, have something to eat, hop into the museum and see what's going on. The programs that are held there are a great way to get everyone involved in our history and pull us together as a community. I've met a few people up there that I probably wouldn't have met just hanging out at my house. Tourists also get to learn about our town while visiting our shops, which sell local goods, and they can come in and learn about local history at the museum, and I like that. This was kind of one of the reasons that we moved here, because it gives Mount Holly that niche hometown feeling, and I feel like if it weren't on Main Street anymore, it just wouldn't feel the same. Tourists aren't really coming here to get more of the same where they get everywhere else in all of the bigger cities. They're coming here for our local restaurants, they're coming here for our local shops, and they're coming here to learn a little bit of local history about Mount Holly. So I really hope that you will reconsider moving. Thank you.
Thank you. Camille Jessen.
My name is Camille Jessen. I'm a present board member, and I'm also a resident, a lifelong resident of Mount Holly. And I want to thank the council for being here tonight and listening to all these concerned citizens. We're frustrated, and I know that you too are frustrated. So many of our wonderful families in this community have placed in our trust family heirlooms to be given to the museum. And we have made a promise to care for each archive and display it properly. There are over 3,000 gifts that have been cataloged and identified as to where it can be found, either on display or in storage. This work is done behind the scene by who? Volunteers. The index catalog would be out of compliance if the museum moves, and someone faces an incredible challenge to recreate it. Many of the volunteers are here tonight. These volunteers, plus many more, designed and carefully developed each exhibit for a special place in that museum. This took a tremendous amount of energy and time, months and months and months. Without dedicated volunteers, who will be willing to roll up their sleeve and jump in full force again? Some folks who gave so much to the museum that we enjoy today are older and physically unable to create it again. Volunteer spirits will need to be lifted if we move. The museum is so much more than a few articles displayed in 9 rooms by a few volunteers. Your museum, my museum, follows the American Alliance of Museum Guidelines. It's a first-class museum, and it is the envy of many surrounding cities. I suggest that the city consider restoring the 3rd and ground floor of the historical building for shared space with the museum. This idea benefits the city with some new business revenue, and it would keep the museum on Main Street. That's where it belongs. Would this be a possibility?
Gary Neely.
My name is Gary Neely. I was born and bred in Mount Holly. I've lived at my current address in Woodland Park for the last 30 years. I've been a member of the Mount Holly Historical Society for almost 15 years, from the early days when it was meeting at the Methodist Church. I attended Mount Holly schools, was a member of a local church. I played and supported athletic teams from Mount Holly for many years. I've served on the Mount Holly Sports Hall of Fame committee for about 15 years now. And I've visited the museum many times over the years, and I really love to go to those rooms such as the school room, the sports room, and the church room. In fact, I've told many of my church mates, schoolmates, teammates, they should do like I do, drop in when you're downtown for another event and see what the museum has to offer. I've heard that there's been an estimated 36,000 visits made to the museum since it's been located at its current location. I believe that many of those people who visited were just like me. They were downtown for another reason, and they popped in. The city has supported the Historical Society for many years, and the society has made good use of the facilities. There may come a time when events shift off of Main Street, and relocating the museum may not be so disruptive, but that time is not now. The Historic Society needs the city to continue to support it as it has. In fact, the Historic Society needs the city very much, but the city needs the Historic Society as well. Let's keep it on Main Street. Thank you.
Delina Fur.
Most of what I was going to say has been covered, but I will say this. At the museum, we offer school tours aligned with the North Carolina Standard Course of Study. Before the pandemic, 125 third graders walked one block to the museum, which they won't be able to do at the new site. Accompanied by their 5 teachers, the students toured numerous exhibits presented by the Historical Society. This year, we are trying to expand these tours to include Pinewood and Catawba Heights, maybe different grade levels. A middle school class has visited several times, as well as a first grade class, that will be coming in the spring if the museum stays downtown. We also, at the museum, offer research material to all teachers. This museum is the perfect place for these tours. We also offer every month a program for our citizens. The old A&E brick building on Main Street that was custom made for Mount Holly's museum is historic in itself. Main Street storefronts come and go. Can we not have one storefront that remains the same, one that is permanent, that Mount Holly is noted for, that makes us Mount Holly? I know towns and cities are all about businesses and money, and I know that the storefront properties are very valuable, and I know that the council has given us money for upkeep, which we're thankful for. But all that aside, can we not have one property on Main Street that is not commercial, one that is devoted just to the people, giving them a sense of community while preserving their history?
Archie Huffstetler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I had to kind of change because I don't want to speak on things that everybody's already talked about. But two things really concern me. One about the Historical Society. I've been fortunate and proud to serve on the board 2 different times and have been a member for a number of years. The Historical Society, though, especially for the new members of the people on the council that hadn't been here that many years, is just a group of people, just a group of citizens like everybody else here that was asked to come together and do something with the archives. And we're proud of what we've done, and the fun part is now. You know, we get to see the results of all the work that people have done in the past. But we talk about the Historical Society, and I think that's just, it's not really, doesn't mean a lot to me as much as just kind of like the city of Mount Holly. We talk about the city's property, the city is this. The museum belongs to the people of the city of Mount Holly. It's not the Historical Society, it's not the city council. And I'm not trying to be negative about that, but that's just the way it is. And that's who we need to think about. The city has done a wonderful job in supporting the Historical Society. I know we've raised a lot of money in the Historical Society to do some of the things we've been able to do. I love my city. I've been, I tell people I grew up on Route 1, Tuckasegee Road, Mount Holly, North Carolina, anywhere I go. And I'm proud to be from this community. The museum belongs on Main Street. It's, I know you want to do the right thing. I think you thought you have. But I just have to tell you, I don't believe so. I think we need to keep it on Main Street. I think that the people deserve that, and I appreciate all of you and what all you do. Thank you.
Marion, is it Vani? Vanny? Sorry about that. Nobody pronounces my last name correctly, so I understand.
Good evening. I'd like to thank the council for having us join them in this discussion this evening. I moved to Mount Holly 9 years ago and have been a member of the Historical Society probably very shortly after I arrived. I have served as a member of the Exhibits Committee, board member, and treasurer. I was involved in our museum up north and can say ours far exceeds any of the museums I have visited. All the items on display have been donated by community residents with the promise their items would be displayed. When visitors come to visit, we always take them downtown, not only because of our museum, but the unique shops and restaurants that help our businesses thrive. Offices will not do this. The more attractions downtown, the better. It also increases your tax revenue. Our military room is one of the finest in the state. The uniforms displayed, as well as the pictures of our veterans that rotate on our closed-circuit TV, are magnificent. I am proud to say the uniform of my daughter and my late husband Raymond are a part of the exhibit. Have all the council members visited the museum? It is important as a council member that you actually been to visit the place you are wanting to move. I was very impressed how city councils of the past supported us in all our endeavors. They understood how important it was for our children to know the history of our city. The knowledge is important for them to have a sense of pride in their community. I cannot tell you how heartbroken I am to hear that this council wants to move it to a location that is so far removed from downtown and buried out of the way that no one would visit. The proposed new location is already hard to see and out of the way of the main traffic area. The museum location needs to remain at its present site in the heart of downtown. After all, isn't this all where it began? Part of Mount Holly's heart is now in storage since the sale of the annex has increased our space and forced to put 3 exhibits in storage. There was a lot of hard work and long hours setting up the museum, and now we have many heartbroken families because their loved ones will be forgotten. I wonder how many citizens are well aware of the sale. I hope this council will not be following the path that many cities across the nation have taken, removing history. Is this going to continue as the future of America?
Thank you, Mary. Annette Williams. Did you hear me?
Yes, she's coming.
My name is Annette Williams. We moved here in Mount Holly in 1961. I graduated from Mount Holly High School and still live here. Been here for that length of time. I've been a board member and I have been a docent for the society. The reason for a museum is to keep the history of the area it serves. Our museum tells the story of old Mount Holly. In order to do this, we keep documents, pictures, furniture, and donations that we have received from the people of Mount Holly. And these are gifts from the people of Mount Holly. To be able to share this museum, we need to stay at the present location. It is easy to get to, a safe place, and is a great addition to the downtown Mount Holly area. The Grand Hall location is a decrease in the amount of square footage. Not all of our displays can go in there. We need more space since the annex was sold, not less. All citizens need to have an opportunity to know and understand the old Mount Holly, things that shaped this town and shaped our lives by the people who came before us. If you step out on the steps there at the museum and look down the street at the old buildings, you remember. You remember Hollins. You remember Summey's. You remember Charlie's. And I'm sure there's some young people here, maybe not young anymore, that worked at those stores. They walked down from the Mount Holly High School to these stores and worked. Jones Brothers, A&P. I worked at the great Mount Holly Gaston Theater for over a year. If y'all can remember that. all gone. All these people, all these businesses are gone, but we still have the buildings, and they are beautiful buildings. Memories is all that we have left of this, that we have those memories in our museum. Thank you.
Carolyn Breer.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council, for having us tonight. I was born and raised in Mount Holly on Tuckasegee Mill Village. My mom and dad moved here in 1947, and 6 weeks later, Carolyn was born. And I was a terror on the Mill Village. It was a wonderful time. But what I would like to say is I raised my children here. And then my daughter, later, when she got married, she said to me, "Mom, I want to move to Mount Holly." She lived in Charlotte. She said, "I want to move to Mount Holly. I want my children to have the same kind of upbringing that I did. I love a small town." So she built a house across the street from me, and she raised her daughters there. And so what I would like to say was in 2007, I was elected to the City Council. And the mayor started a facilities committee, and we started looking at some of the empty buildings that we had because we had moved in here and the old city hall was empty. We had several buildings, the old police department, the old fire department, places that we had to have a fit for Mount Holly. So what we did, we started working with some of the citizens that started talking about having a historical society and where we could put it. We looked down here. It was just a big empty spot at that time. And we had some citizens say they didn't want their children to come down here over 4 lanes of highway. It was unsafe. We looked at different things. And then they started talking about the old city hall. And we went and we looked at it and everything. And it just grew and grew and grew. And that became the Historical Society. Jerry Bishop was our first liaison there, and after Jerry retired, I became the liaison, and I worked with everybody on the committees. I've never seen such hard-working, dedicated people in my life. Every time they would have a different program, it was awesome. And for me to take my family in there and see my history and walk down the old band room, the old church room, and it was just like reliving my life. So the only thing as a past council person I can say is I love my downtown and I love the Historical Society. It's a fit, and I would like for us to leave it there.
Becky Farah. I feel you. There we go. I could feel you coming. I couldn't see you. I didn't know if you heard me. No, that's fine.
My name is Becky Farah, and I live at 2115 Mountain Island Highway, Mount Holly, North Carolina. I have been in this community for well over 50 years, unfortunately. But anyway, let's go on to what my talk is about. When it comes to value, in a sense, is it like beauty? Is it always in the hands and the eye of the beholder? Or is it simply the enhancements that have been made and the way one determines value is any number of ways. So let's look at what the museum is worth. Is it determined by the volunteer time multiplied by the dollar value, adding the money spent on refurbishments, display cases, and props, plus the professional consultants that created design and construction unique to our current location? If so, one could bet that the value of the museum exceeds $2 million. In addition, there's an estimate as far as volunteer time of well over 2,000 visitors on an annual basis on weekends alone. Then the Friday night events, estimated in the hundreds of people who visit the museum, that equals another 1,000 plus visitors. We have our monthly meetings, which consist of 50 to 75 people who come and enjoy different and variety of topics and interest to history and our current location, which would mean another 600 more visitors. All total, that would equal about 3,600. You multiply that times the number of years the museum has been in existence, you get your 36,000 visitors. In the city of Mount Holly, the census for 2020 said the people of Mount Holly population was 15,947, which mathematically would figure that the museum has served well over twice the population of the city in just 10 years. In closing, why not spread more of your appreciated value and services to the museum at its current location, and let us furnish you with rotating or permanent exhibits here at the Grand Hall. We certainly have a lot of more wonderful exhibits that we could use to furbish and enhance the location. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Tom Roberts Reynolds.
I had to catch the last of that.
I know. Runs together.
My daddy moved us here in 1957. It was my junior year in high school. I thought I had come to the end of the world. The second day I was here, I met my first husband, and so that was a good thing. I love history. I've done a series of historical prints of Mount Holly. I've been doing an ornament of Mount Holly for several years. We're going to do the museum this year, Lord willing. One of the things that I think bothered me the most when hearing that I am not a member of the board, I have been in the museum, and my father-in-law went down after the flood of 1916 and fished the bell that's in the history room out of the river in Belmont, and it was in my backyard for years. And my children, I rang it every day for them to come home, and everybody in the neighborhood out at 703 West Catawba said, when Miss Roberts rings the bell, you come home. So I just felt like it needed to be here because it was part of Mount Island, and that it needed to be here in Mount Holly. And there are several other things there that my father-in-law donated. I just think it's a wonderful thing that it's on Main Street, and I do feel like that maybe we could do something to the building that you were showing the renovations and the things that were needed to be done to it. So why can't we just fix that upstairs and add to the museum? I mean, that's the way my mind works. I don't know. I know that's lots of money. But I do plan to be a part of the museum. I was away for about 15 years. I've been back the last 2 years, and Mount Holly is home. I raised my family here. I've been here over 50 years now. Thank you.
Joe Haverty.
Mayor, City Council, people of Mount Holly, thank y'all very, very much for coming this evening. My name is Joe Haverty. My family roots run deep here in Mount Holly, well over 100 years. I grew up about 3 blocks away on the corner of Oakland Street and West Catawba Avenue and my great-grandfather's house, a house which is still standing today. I'm a member of the Historical Society, and I don't have any prepared notes or anything. Everything that I've kind of thought I was going to say has already been said, but I did want to say from the heart, from my heart, and I think from everybody here, I think we have shown, we the people have spoken tonight. We want to leave the museum downtown. Am I right?
Amen.
So let's keep that thought. Let's do that. Let's do everything in our power to keep the museum downtown. I'm a member of the Historical Society. My wife is also a member. I'm a native son. I'm proud of it. Let's keep the museum where it belongs. We've seen so many things come and go. If you've lived here for a long time, you've seen the fire department, the police department, the post office, City Hall, not to mention all of the businesses, some of that have been mentioned. My great uncles, Jones Brothers, you know, the Gaston Theater, Durs, the list goes on and on. Let's keep this one thing downtown. Let's keep it for us. We the citizens, we have spoken.
Rita's not here? Okay. Robert D. Black.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council, staff, for all the work that you've done to get us to this point. My name's Robert Black. I'm a former board member of the Historical Society, current member, former council member, and former mayor. So there's a lot of passion that everybody in this room has for this topic tonight. I've only seen a few people leave, which is unheard of for a city council meeting, for people to stay. So I think that's important.
They were waiting on you to speak.
Right. I want to share just a few things. Gary mentioned earlier about the earlier versions. I'll try to be brief. When Mayor Black, Charles Black, asked Melanie and I to head the Archives Committee, I think it was in late 1989, we asked him what the archives room, what was he talking about? If you're familiar with that building, when you go in now, it's the candy store, the general store, I think you call it. That was a locked room. I think it had a canopy over it. When Judy Bowen, some of you remember Judy Bowen, when she let Melanie and I in there to look at that room, you could hardly open the door because there were things strewn on the floor, broken display cases, but boxes of very important artifacts that the Junior Women's Club, I'm sure some of those are still here, that they had taken care of that. So when Melanie and I took that over, we were trying to find out what it was, what was in there. It wasn't until, I think, 1992 when the city council officially made us an active committee. I think Ms. Harris was the first liaison to that committee. Phil Ponder, who was city manager at the time, helped us purchase display cases with city funds. So I would argue the point that the Historical Society, the earlier version, started back in 1992. So that's 30 years of history. 30 years of history. That later on, when the City Hall was renovated, we were given room in the very back, which is now the mill room. But that was the archives room that was inaccessible to the public because there were locked doors, because of security issues. So we had an archives room, but nobody could get access to it. So it wasn't until later on when Ms. Briere talked about how that came about, and I think the book club maybe was a part of that. There are many people that I look in the room that are passionate about this, and council is passionate about this. I think there's a way that we can combine the passions that we each have. As Joey said, we all want it, what's best for our town. We all want it to be a viable part. I think it is. I think it's worth being there. I would also say this. I was part of the council that helped purchase this building, but I will remember in 2008 when the City Hall moved down to this location, there were many people that said the city has left downtown. Why did they do that? I would argue that the Historical Society has been that presence for the city in downtown. And I think that's important that we keep that, if at all possible. I think there's a way to continue the dialogue. This has been amazing. As you said, Mayor, there aren't many cities would allow that. Thank you for allowing this discussion. I think this is the first of many meetings that can make that happen. So thank you for your time. Thank you for considering this, and thank you for listening. Thank you.
Dickie Leonard. I'm not going to say anything this time. That's right.
Well, he's done told you who I am, so I've lived in Mount Holly and around Mount Holly my whole life. And they're great. We've got a great historical society, everything in it. But I'm going to talk. If I get emotional, don't. About the military. My granddaddy, he was born in 1900, died in 1992. He fought in World War I and wore that uniform across Germany and France in 1916-17. And it's where he wants it. It's where I wanted it. I didn't know it till I come down and seen the military, everything they got. I'm sorry. But he is a wonderful man. And I know this uniform's where he wants it. And I'd like to see it stay on Main Street where he would want it. He is a wonderful man. Everything in that military breaks my heart. I went to school with 5 of those kids that got killed in Vietnam. They were personal friends of mine. I would probably been there with them if my mother would have signed. I hope I don't go over. But we just got so much to be proud of, and the city should be proud of this. But I ain't gonna talk a whole lot more, but I just want to know everybody, it's where he wanted.
Jennifer Graham. Reggie, did you sign her up? You don't want to speak? No, well, okay. I'm not going to beg you. So if you don't, Reggie. Well, I just got through looking at this, and it's the same handwriting, so I thought he signed you up. Sugar Bear. All right. Gary Brinkley.
I'm Gary Brinkley. I live at 176 Tom Sawyer Lane here in Mount Holly. I grew up here, moved away for work reasons, and when I retired, I could have lived anywhere in the world, and I chose to come back here, and I'm glad that I did. I know I've already spoken, but my previous comments were as a former president, a former board member, and a member of the Historical Society. But right now, I'm speaking just as me, the citizen. I've been sitting there listening to all the comments and taking notes, taking things out, adding things back in. We ought not to be here tonight, but we're here tonight because we didn't have conversations about this topic back in January, December, before the retreat. The retreat was discussed, let's move the museum. Now granted, it was on the agenda. I promise you, I'm not an agenda watcher. I don't look every 2 weeks to see what's on the agenda. But I will say that I would hope, as the mayor said earlier, we're all friends. We all know each other. I would have hoped somebody would have contacted Richard Brown or me and said, hey, there are these concerns about the building. There are these concerns. Can we get together and talk about it? That didn't happen. And so I'm sorry that didn't happen. Had it happened, we wouldn't have been here tonight. So I've got a couple of recommendations, and then I'll be done. I recommend that the city council, roll back its vote to get us back to the current status quo. Although I have to say, I'm not sure a final vote really took place. If you look at the posted minutes, it says council directed the staff to proceed with the move. It doesn't say a vote was taken, it doesn't say a vote wasn't taken. I spoke to 3 people who attended the retreat, and all 3 of them said, I don't really remember. And that's what minutes are supposed to do. The minutes are the memory of what happened. The minutes are important. All of you that are on boards, and they do the minutes and you just raise your hand, I approve, you better read them because they're important, because they're the memory of what went on. The city has minutes back from who knows, a long, long time ago. There's a big, fat, thick book that has all the old minutes. You can come down here and look at it. It's pretty amazing. But anyway, as would be obvious, we need to keep the museum where it is now. And then the other recommendation I have is that a small group of people need to get together to develop some workable plans to these issues. We're not going to solve all these issues with the 75 of us or how many people are here. Several good alternatives have been mentioned tonight. I'm sure there's several others. And there are other possibilities. So let's see what a collaborative team can put together. Rather than focus on, let's move the museum down, let's focus on how do we keep the museum.
Thank you, Gary.
How do we keep the museum where it is?
Huh? I don't know. It moves by the second. Very lucky.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to allow me to speak my heart. I walked in the Mount Holly Historical Society Museum, and I was amazed. I was blown away. It caused me to donate an Air Force uniform that belonged to my brother. My brother is 68 years old, very much alive, and has moved back to Mount Holly. You will never know how much that helped my mental health, my brother's mental health. Mount Holly, you are a town to be very proud of, second to none. I just visited a museum last week, and it does not compare to Mount Holly's Historical Museum. Be proud of the work that you have done, the money that you have spent, the quality hours that you have put into preserving Mount Holly's history. There's even more to come, more and more and more to come. Your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren will be affected by what you decide to do with the Mount Holly Historical Society Museum. Please, please consider keeping it on Main Street. I reside on Main Street for 65 long years. I love Main Street, I love Mount Holly, and I love you. Thank you.
Well, that is everybody signed up to speak that is still here and hasn't scratched their name out. So here's what does council wish to say anything at this point? What we want to do is listen. And I think you've seen 6 people, 7, they have a hard time keeping quiet. Listen, okay? And I think that's important that you understand and appreciate that we're here to listen. Okay, and that we're going to follow up with the board, who is the Historical Society, who our MOU is with, and we're going to continue our talks. Based on the number of people here from now on, Richard, you're never going to have a problem finding board members. They all are passionate, as they should be, and I think the one thing that we can all take from this is we love the Mount Holly Historical Society Museum and its members. Nobody's ever debated that, and I hope nobody here doubts that we love each other in this endeavor. That's never been the problem, never been the issue. All right, so I want y'all to know that on behalf of the City Council, we value everything that has been said, absolutely. I think that as we work through the issues at hand, we'll look for some very creative ways to address this, because it's not going to be easy. We didn't make any direction to our city staff without thoughtful consideration, I promise, because it means a lot to us too. We're representing you, and we put the money there as well. So believe me when I say it's important to all of us. So we look forward to those further conversations and a direction to move forward. And we've heard you. There's no doubt. We're not deaf. We get it. And we appreciate it, because this is what it's all about. History is about democracy, and this is the way government should work. So we appreciate you, and we appreciate you being here. So thank you. Next on our agenda is closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143318.11A 3 and 5. I need a motion. Ms. Polish, second by Ms. Harris. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. We will meet in the council executive conference room. You're welcome. I knew it had to be something weird. Thank you. Appreciate it. Take care. Thank you, sir.